The following broadcast is a Nighthawk Network presentation. What up, though, y'all? It's your boy E-Buck in the building, one they call the Nighthawk, and this is the I Am Nighthawk Podcast. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully, you all guys are having a good week thus far. So far, so good for me, all in all. Nothing great to report. Did some really stupid. We'll talk about that near the end of the show. But anyway, beyond that, everything is going about as well as be expected, all in all. Tonight we asked the question as we once again talk about the things that I think about late at night while you guys are asleep or just sleeping on what we need to be thinking about. That part. Tonight I asked the simple question: how do we explain war to a child? How do you explain war to a child? Why that? Well, of course, that question comes up in my head as we think about what's been going on in the world lately, particularly with the conflict going on in Israel. We asked that question because of that, but we'll break it down. It's a little deeper than just what it says on the surface. All right. We got Road Stardom checking in. As always, we appreciate you, Road, for checking in. We will take time out from the shows. We always doing road checks in to let you know that we want you to follow our girl Road to Stardom. You can find her on several platforms, including the Player FM, my platform of preference for her. You also can find her on the Instagram. Well, actually, that's the Facebook. That's the Instagram right there. And you look for Road to Stardom Radio and track down Road and listen to all the quality music that she plays on her music broadcast that she's been doing for well over a decade now. You also can go to her merchandise at Road to Start Merchandise and support her in that way by buying some of the merchandise that you will find on her platform. You could do that for us. We would greatly appreciate it. My buddy and partner in crime from the other show known as Big Boy Sports Report, also checking in what's going on, Big Hugh. Thank you for checking in as well. You can find my buddy Hugh on his Spotify podcast. Let me move that so y'all can properly see that better. Hold on. There you go. The Guru's Perspective. You can find that on Spotify, where he is doing his thing in terms of broadcast about sports and his takes and his picks and all of that. You definitely want to check that out. Go to Spotify, check it out, share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. You can do that for my buddy Hugh. I would appreciate that as well. Please check out my peoples and support them in their endeavors. We appreciate that here at the Nighthawk Network. That being said, back to the show itself. We asked the question, and if you forgot what that question is, let me just type it in here in the comments. How do we tell a child about war? All right, so let's not even hold them up. Let's just get right into it, shall we? Tonight's topic, our main topic: how do we tell a child about war? Okay, before we go there, we got another comment checking in. Hold on. He was saying, it's hard to really explain, but I learned because my uncle was a sergeant and went to war in the Gulf War. Unfortunately, we learned from the news and my parents explained it as well. And for those of you who are parents, I understand that could be a very difficult conversation. And we'll pretty much get into why I feel that is as well. But we asked a simple question. So let's start at the beginning. If Pat was alive and I was back in my childhood years and I would come to her and be like, Mama, what is war? My mama, being who she was, would tell me, go get the dictionary or that Encyclopedia Britannica. Y'all remember those back in the day? Before there was an internet and Google search and all that? She said, go grab one of them and look it up for yourself. So, of course, first thing I did was go back old school and look up a working definition of what is war. So, what is war according to the definition? It is a conflict carried on by force of arms, as between nations or between parties within a nation. Warfare, as by land, sea, or air. War also can be defined as a state of period, a state or period, I should say, of armed hostility or active military operations. Two nations at war with each other. Now, when you listen to that definition, understand a couple things. We really usually think of war as one faction fighting another faction in some way, shape, or form. East versus West, this country versus that country, these guys versus those guys. But we need to break it down even further. What does war really mean? In my mind, this is what I look at. War is a situation to where you are so upset about how you're being treated or responded to by individuals that you are willing to, by any means necessary, including physical force, to combat that person, to make them stop, or to hit your way out of the deal. It is deeply rooted in something that we really struggle with. Sometimes we struggle with that word love. I think we really struggle even more with that word hate. Understand, I grew up around people that would tell me you should never say you hate somebody because that is the strongest emotion that you can say in regards to an individual. It is better to love anybody than to hate them. Understand that in this day and age, we have parents, unfortunately, that do not do the basic principles of what they should be teaching children at all. The first thing you obviously should be teaching a child is how to deal with its basic physical functions. How to walk, how to talk, how to speak, those types of things. The secondary thing I think you should be teaching any child is right from wrong. What is right, what is wrong? That's where it becomes more difficult because the lines of that get blurred. Because some people's conceptions of right and wrong are vastly different based on their environment and how they grew up and what they choose to believe, either personally, religious wise, or otherwise. Now, understand, we're not about to sit here and break down the upcoming war or the already ongoing war between the Israelis and the Palestinians and all that. I am not skilled enough to circumnavigate that whole scenario. Several people this week have been getting trouble on media for citing their opinions one way or another. I am not about to join those ranks. I simply say anything that causes someone to lose their life before their time, in other words, to have them die from something that's not natural causes, is not good. Taking anyone's life is probably the very worst thing any human being could do to another human being, period. Because last I checked, there is no coming back from death. Unless, of course, your name is Jesus or Lazarus. It ain't happening, okay? So when you literally kill someone, they are gone. And there is no bringing them back. If that is the ultimate result of what any war is, to where you eliminate the person who is persecuting you or vice versa, how could you ever view war as anything but something where nobody wins? So if I was to have a child of my own, I would tell them in the end, war is probably one of the worst things there could be because no one truly wins in a war. Understand, war is one of the oldest things we know. War dates back to the days before Christ, to the days of the first man, Cain and Abel. There have been disagreements amongst each other to where it was felt necessary to cause physical, either permanent or temporary harm to someone with use of physical force. That dates back to the very beginning of man itself. That being said, from a physiological standpoint, we all are human beings in the same way. In other words, we are all interrelated in some way, shape, or form. So that when we hurt someone, regardless of what color, race, religion, etc., if you hurt another human being, you are hurting one of your own. You are hurting your family. We are all related in that way. We are all human beings, one and the same. We may believe different things. We may have grew up in different regions. We may look different. But basic human being is basic human being, all the way from Cro-Magnon on down to the present. And if we have a conflict to where we feel it so necessary to cause you permanent damage, that is war. And war is something we should not want as people, period. Now, I know in saying that it makes perfect sense to me at least, but some people understand that as human beings, we do have our flaws. And one of the flaws we have is that sometimes our emotions get the best of us. Sometimes we are very much ruled by our emotions. You could be the most patient person in the world, but in the end, as Rhoda is saying, hi back to Hugh. In the end, we have to understand that as people, there is not one of us on this planet that, if pushed to the brink of our very core, could not find some reason to be so upset by something that is done to them that it would cause them to want to go to war with someone else. We all have that in us, unfortunately. It is instinctive for most of us to want to live by any means possible. So that if it comes down to you having to go to war with someone else in order to live your life, if you deemed it that necessary, you would do what you have to do. So when we look at war itself, it serves its purpose, but it's not a good thing. Because in the end, somebody usually dies. And even if in the end you feel you are on the right side or the wrong side of what the war was about, there are casualties. And those casualties last not just this lifetime, but lifetimes of lifetimes. We all, after hundreds of thousands of years of being human beings on this planet, have lost somebody in a war at some point. We may have known that person, we may have not known that person. But we all, every last human being on earth, are victim more than likely of some type of war. There is no peaceful society to where they have been human since the very beginning and war has not affected them in no way, shape, or form whatsoever. At some point down back in our history, there was a time where their people was in conflict with some other people and they lost people as a result. It is the sad truth of the matter. Yes, it is good to be human as opposed to certain other species and life forms because we have the ability not only to have the thumbs to build and things that most animals do not, but also because we are able to reason on a level that it seems most animals cannot. Those superpowers being had, it still does not make us good people to each other at times. It still does not make us as wise as we should or could be. If we put the same efforts into warring with one another, into other things, think about how much better this world possibly could be at this point in time. Understand, as an American who has lived here my whole life, who has a working understanding of our government, and particularly the budget of our government, most of my tax-paying dollars every year goes to the government for the main thing they spend money on. Not the people, not food, not agriculture, not infrastructure, not any of that. The biggest thing in the budget of these United States is for defense. When push comes to shove, understand, even though we have these problems still with Congress here, we talked about that last week. Notice how that's still not resolved. If it came down to somebody attacking this country right now, today, we would put all that stuff aside and Congress would intervene, and in less than an hour or two, money would be allocated for us to go to war with whoever we needed to go to war to if it came down to that at this very moment. That's just how important that part is to our government. Preservation of life and property over pretty much everything else. Now, understand there are several different other reasons other countries, other cities, other states, other people go to war. And we could be on from now to this time again next week trying to explain all of that. Again, sometimes you got to be smart enough to know what you're not smart enough to know. That is one of those things. Keep in mind, at any given time on planet Earth, there are several wars going on simultaneously throughout the planet. This thing in Israel is just one of many, okay? There are wars constantly going on in several countries in Africa that we don't even talk about, that we rarely ever hear about. Because us being Americans, usually it's America first or America only with most of y'all. Some of y'all, it ain't even as in-depth as that. It's basically whatever's going on in your little slice of heaven you are concerned with. So as some of you might be watching this now, I know there are some of you have no idea about what's going on in Israel or any other part of the country. All you know is the hood. All you care about is the hood and hood-related stuff. When that is your thought process, you process war and everything else on earth differently. Because in the end, you only care about that little slice of what you got going. For you, most of these conversations we have on the show, they up and beyond you. You could care less if it ain't about what's going on with Jada Pinkett Smith or Cardi B or Britney Spears right now, basketball, etc., etc. Those are the things you guys care about. It shows for that. I don't even have a show for that much, but this is not that discussion. This is a serious discussion about one of the most serious things that goes on this big blue ball we call Earth every single day. Something that you may not care about now, but could very well be a part of something you'll have to care about later. Understand, any of these conflicts, the way the world is set up, if the wrong person bombs the wrong person, or the wrong person gets killed in one of these conflicts, and that person gets blamed for it from another country, it can set off a chain reaction that could very well lead to World War III and possibly the destruction of the planet as we know it, depending on how it all goes down. That could literally happen at any moment, any day. That's why you just can't have any old body in charge, particularly people who are orange and look like clowns. I'm just saying. It is of utmost importance that when you come to things such as this, that you are very, very cautious and careful as to how you proceed. In a thinking man's world, there should be nothing regardless of what it is that causes you to go to war immediately. There has to be some type of thought process that goes into play. Part of the problem that we have, particularly in these urban societies at this point, is that when there is conflict, the first thing thought of is resolve. Period. You done made me mad. You done did this. I have this weapon on my person. Let's do this. No thought of what will happen afterwards. No thought of who might get hurt in the process. For some people, it's that instinctive. For some people, I think they even look for war to the point of, okay, the minute this happens, I'm going to war. I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to shoot. I'm ready to do whatever I need to do. When you have people that think like that in our society, and your child asks you, what is war? That is another thing that makes it hard to really explain. Because your thought processes may be different from that, not only of your neighbor, but other people that live down the block, or the people that stay in the next town, or what have you. Understand, war is not just basic principle stuff all the time. It's not just about, okay, you believe differently than I believe, or this is my property, but you think it's yours. This is my person you hurt, now I gotta hurt you back. Sometimes war is way, way more complex than that. Keep in mind, part of why I don't touch the content of why this particular war is coming is because these things date back thousands of years, okay? For those of you who have the Bible knowledge, you know, some of this goes back to the days of Cain and Abel and Esau and Jacob. Okay? Remember, all religions at one point in time in this world was one religion, and then it broke off into other things. It all started, we all believed in one guy, whatnot, then people believed it differently from this angle, that angle, that's why we have all the many different religions in the world, okay? And who are us to say whose is right and whose is wrong? Okay? Now, granted, if you believe in Satan and all that, I think you're wrong. But I'm sure if you were Satanist, you have reason to believe you was right. And Muslim and so on and so forth. Like I said, it's not my place to even get into that even halfway fully. Because it's not my place to speak on that. I am but one person who believes as I believe. We all should have our own personal belief with whoever we feel is our creator, okay? We'll leave it at that. But war is something we should not think of lightly or take lightly, okay? It is something to where when we wake up in the morning, we would not like to dwell on it, but you have to realize some people are waking up even now in a war zone where they have no choice but to think about it. They may not even be waking up in their home at this moment. They may be in a bunker somewhere or somewhere in a hole in the ground because their world is being turned upside down in a war not of their own device or a war they just happen to be monkey in the middle of. War has no winners, only losers. Because in the end, if somebody dies, if somebody's place of residence no longer exists, if somebody's way of life is permanently changed because they have been physically injured to that degree, if somebody has lost loved ones, if somebody can no longer live their life as they once did because their innocence is gone, because they have been a part of a war, not of their making, but of their proximity, then that is that. So how do you tell a child about war? You really can't. Because though we understand the basic principles, we can actually look up a definition as I did. We can't really fully explain why there is war when we know war is bad. when we know war, it ends up oftentimes in people losing their lives. When we know the sense of, okay, we don't want that to happen, but sometimes feel like we need for it to happen. When you hate somebody to the point to where you no longer want them to exist, that is the ultimate hate. That is hate on a level that no one should ever truly feel within themselves. But that is a hate that many of us walk around with. Because understand, as Americans, we at war with each other. I go back to the definition. A state or period of armed hostility or active military operations. Two nations at war with each other. There are nations of people, keep in mind, United States is the most diverse country of this size on planet Earth. In other words, there are people from pretty much every other country on Earth that live here in these United States. In other countries, there are some countries, it may be like hundreds of people that are from somewhere else. Everybody else is Swiss, or everybody else is Austrian, or you know what I'm saying? This is the only country like that where, okay, we all Americans, but some of us was born here, some of us come from other countries, some of us still have ancestry from other countries. This is the only place where you can go, and maybe 5 blocks down there's Mexican town, and another couple miles away is Korean town, and so on and so forth. And it's like that in 200 other cities across the country. This is the only nation that is truly like that, truly diverse to that degree. So yeah, it would make sense that right now we have some people on one side of that conflict that's not happy with the other side of that conflict. And neither one of them really don't have nothing to do with each other outside of the fact of their ancestry. Some of them ain't never been in Israel a day in their life, but because their people come from Israel, or they are Jewish, or they are Palestinian, what have you, they have a say in the matter because it's about their people. Can't help but get that. But that being said, I don't want anyone to hurt anybody. If you are a person that truly grew up knowing right from wrong, you know killing is wrong. Death is wrong. But you also know as you get old enough that in life sometimes there are reasons you feel is worthy of somebody dying for. I go back to the little crazy child sitting there in Oakland County Prison right now that killed the people in Oxford. I think what he did, quite honestly, is worth dying for. I feel like you have destroyed the lives of those 4 people forever. They are no longer here on this earth. You have injured several people. They will never be the same because of that. You have a school where people to this day still attend that school, and probably the minute something drop on the floor and look around because they still remember that day like it was yesterday. Yet you still get to live your life, and you probably will get life without parole, but still get to live for the next 50 years. While several people probably feel like you should no longer be here. If they had that opportunity to get at you in a warlike manner, they probably would take their ultimate revenge on you. Unfortunately, that is what is instinctive in some of us, if not most of us. If pushed to a point, we all would go to war. I sadly say that. I would like to think that hopefully that will never happen in my existence. But I can't say that because, like I said, if put in a certain situation, I would feel that was my only alternative. And I feel most people would feel the same if put in that same situation. What situation? I mean, I don't even want to put out an example. You know, just know that it's not good. War has no winners. War is bad. War is based in hate. War is something I wish no child would never have to learn or go through or live through. But unfortunately, it is a part of our existence as human beings. In the end, the only real weapon we have against war is prayer. And the hope that one day we can all find peaceful conflict resolutions to any issue that we have with each other, or that it becomes to a point where we find some way to deal with things to where war is no longer deemed necessary. We become such a society to where war is stupid. And even thinking about war would be stupid. It'd be the last thing that we would come to in order to resolve issues. And I can just pray that, for all the wars that do go on this world every day, that someday there'll be less and some days there'll be none. All we can do is hope. So, yep, that is my discussion on how do you tell a child about war. The answer is you can't. You just do the best you can to explain it to them and hope that they make sound decisions before they find themselves in these types of conflicts, and that we somehow find it within ourselves to conflict resolute war amongst ourselves, that part. Anyway, that's that part of the discussion. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to pay tribute to a childhood icon that we have lost this weekend. I kind of have a few thoughts on that, so I want to talk about that. And then I got to talk about something I did that was really stupid, but I got to forgive myself. And sometimes when you do stupid stuff, you just got to forgive yourself. So anyway, this is the I Am Nighthawk Podcast. I am E-Buck the Nighthawk. We'll be back after these words from the Nighthawk Network.
Hello, hello, hello. It's another glorious day, my tea-sippers, and you know what time it is. I hope you have all of your comfort together because it's time to dish tea. And you're dishing tea, darlings, with Big Meat.
Can't wait. It's time to dish tea with Big Meat. It's time to dish tea with Big Meat. It's time to dish tea with Big Meat. It's time to dish tea with Big Meat.
Darling.
Find more from Hugh Lee on the Pure to the Game Sports blog or on his Guru's Perspective podcast on Spotify or Anchor Podcasts.
Hey, this is Eric Buckner here in the Nighthawk Network studios. And for all of you that have pet care, grooming, and vet needs, we want you to contact here in the Detroit area, Meet You There Pet Care. That's Meet You There Pet Care, LLC. The phone number is 313-471-4970. So for those of you that have pet care needs here in the Detroit area, please contact Meet You There Pet Care. They will get you situated with all your home pet care, grooming, and vet tech services. And do know that we want to promote all small and minority businesses here in the Nighthawk Network. You can contact me on the Nighthawk Network Detroit page or on Eric Buckner Messenger or Eric Hawk 45 Instagram to get your thing promoted here on the network. Thank you. Have a good one. What's going on, y'all? We are back. This is the I Am Nighthawk Podcast. And as I said, there was an icon that we lost this weekend. If you recognize that face, you know who it is. If not, I will tell you that that is Suzanne Summers, who we lost this weekend. She is, of course, best known for her role in one of the more iconic sitcoms of the 1980s and early 90s. Well, actually, the late 70s, early 80s. That would be Three's Company, known as, of course, the iconic Chrissy Snap. Now, it's certain shows that brings back memories to people from their childhood. This one is one of mine. Keep in mind, I was one of the few people that I knew who not only had their own room, but their own television in their own room at a relatively early age. Keep in mind, that's so commonplace now. It's stupid at this point. I mean, hell, just about everybody 10 on got one of these. So it's like having your own TV wherever you at, truthfully. But it meant something to me, keeping in mind that Three's Company came on at 8:30 or 9 o'clock on Tuesdays, where most kids would probably be in bed or supposed to be in bed, getting ready for school the next day. I would watch Three's Company, and it was one of my favorite shows, primarily because of the girls and primarily because of this young lady right here, Chrissy Snow. Now, when I found out she passed, it kind of hit me. You know, certain people just kind of hit you that way, just like last year, or was that earlier this year when we lost Tina Turner? That kind of hit me hard. You know, it's certain icons that when you think of who they are and what they represented to your life at that time, it hit you a little different. So, you know, it kind of made me go through like I pretty much do now when anyone dies and kind of look at a quick biography of their life as is available to kind of see what it represented. Look into some things I want to re-trigger in my memory of things I didn't know and whatnot. So I happened to find this documentary about Three's Company, what happened to Three's Company. And it, of course, talks about Chrissy Snow. And in it, it talks about why she ended up leaving the show during basically the height of its showness. I believe I have it rewound to about the right part here. We're just going to play a few minutes of this and we'll go from there.
Born to Frank and Marion Mahoney. She would go on record saying she grew up living.
All right, hold on. Let's go. Right there.
The airheaded, bumbling roommate that would often be the cause of many of the misunderstandings in the show. She would be played by Suzanne Summers. Suzanne Summers is the third of 4 children and born to Frank and Marion Mahoney. She would go on record saying she grew up living in constant fear of being hurt or even killed at the hands of her verbally and physically abusive alcoholic father. She won a music scholarship to college but became pregnant after 6 months, and she married the baby's father, Bruce Summers. She states she was unhappy in her marriage and began an affair with her former drama teacher. Her husband found out about it and the marriage ended after just 2 years in 1967. She also distanced herself from her family because her older brother and sister by then were also alcoholics. In 1968, she won a job as a prize model on a game show hosted by future husband Alan Hamill, who was married at the time. The two began dating and she became pregnant while Hamill was still married. She was fired from the series after asking for a raise in the beginning of the 5th season.
I believe it was the 3rd and 4th seasons when we were on hiatus during the summer. I had a call from Alan Hamill, and I had been informed that Suzanne had fired Jay Bernstein as her manager, and her husband, Alan Hamill, had now become her manager. And he wanted to come in and see me and renegotiate her contract. And I said, fine, come in. And he came into my office and had his lawyer with him, a fellow by the name of Gunther Schiff. And they sat down, and I said, well, you want to renegotiate? She is supposed to get $35,000 an episode next season, we're ready to give you more money. He said, how much? I said, we'll up at $5,000. And he said, oh, that's ridiculous. I said, well, what do you want? He said, we want $150,000 an episode. And I started to laugh. I said, Alan, that's silly. If we pay you $150,000, we've got to pay Joyce DeWitt. She's got a favored nations clause, $150,000. We have to pay John Ritter more. We'd have to pay him $200,000. That's $500,000 before we even start writing a script.
He would say that Suzanne would come in for rehearsal and then call him the next day saying she was injured. The show offered to send a doctor to Suzanne's house, but she refused. They ended up having to cancel the episode and wrote the next show without Suzanne, and then the next few. Finally, she came in to do the show, and the show decided they would only allow her to come in with the idea that she was away visiting her mother, and she would only be seen on the phone talking to Jack and Janet. At the end of the season, they let her know they would not continue with her. She would then sue the show for $2.5 million, saying it damaged her career. The show fought back and won the lawsuit. It would end up that they would only have to pay the $35,000 for the one show she actually showed up for. And that was the end for Suzanne Summers and Three's Company. She then would come to Bergman begging, saying, "This is silly, I want to come back to work." Bergman said, "No way, Suzanne, it's over."
I'm looking around and thinking, why are all the men, including John Ritter, making 10 times more? I didn't know John Ritter was making more at that time because we're supposed to have favored nations. Why are all the men getting 10 times more than me? Or any of the women on television? And I say to John and Joyce, at the end of the season before, my contract's up. You two have already renegotiated because you were here before. Mine's up right before the start of the season. I'm going to ask for big money and a piece of the back end, and if you two back me up because we have favored nations, we'll all get it. So I'll be the patsy.
Suzanne would land the role of Carol Foster opposite of Patrick Duffy on the TV show Step by Step in 1991. Mr. and Miss.
So, friends, yeah, that is a little bit of what went on behind the scenes of Three's Company. And basically that explains what happened to where Suzanne Summers was no longer on the show. I always wondered that. I think if I had known about it during the time I was a child at that point, I wouldn't have understood. I mean, gender equality and equal pay and all that, those are concepts that was well beyond my years at that point. It makes a lot more sense now. I mean, think about it. When you look at some of your major shows and how certain characters kind of disappeared and reappeared and whatnot, Sanford and Son is one of the perfect examples I think of that. The year that Fred was in St. Louis was not really that. It was him and the contract dispute that he had with the company. Keeping in mind that the reason Sanford and Son ended was because he wanted more money and found it somewhere else doing another show, and basically just stopped coming to work and didn't tell the rest of the people in San Francisco, many of which he brought to the show himself to play opposite side of him. And they were all kind of blindsided by that. I mean, several Hollywood stories like that. I mean, I was just stunned by the amount, the $150,000 an episode. We're not talking about 2023. That's still nice money in 2023, mind you. But we're talking about back in the 80s. That was ridiculous money for back then. The fact that John Ritter was actually getting that should let you know just how popular that show was. But then you go back to like recent years, think about The Big Bang Theory, where all the major characters on that show was making $1 million an episode. And they offered Mr. Parsons, the guy who played Sheldon, $5 million to do season 13 of The Big Bang Theory, and he refused it. $5 million an episode. Imagine going to work for a week and making $5 million for that 1 week. Nice money if you could get it, huh? But yeah, I mean, on the one hand, yeah, Chrissy was a nice part of the show, and I know people wasn't quite as interested in it once she left. I was a true fan, so I liked the show regardless. And truthfully, the true star of that show was John Ritter. It was Jack Tripper. It would not have been the same show without him. It would have had to shut it down if he had left. So, yeah, I understand all that for the times and what it was about. But in a way, Suzanne Summers was a trailblazer in that regard. Because eventually we did get people who was able to command that type of equal pay and got it, not only in movies, but in sports as well. When we think about the Williams sisters, Serena and Venus, and how now there's equal pay in all of the tournaments because of them. So that's just something about Suzanne Summers that I didn't know until I saw that documentary. And I thought I would share some of that with you. So feel free to check it out for yourselves. I think I'll go back later on and post the actual link to that particular documentary. And like I said, if you was a fan of Three's Company or just kind of wanted to take an interest in Suzanne Summers and her life, it talks about that. There's another interview you might want to check out about her as well. Keep in mind that she had fell out with Joyce DeWitt for many years, and they talk about that conflict in that interview, so you might want to check that out also. But rest in peace, Suzanne Summers. You will be missed. Another part of my childhood gone away. Now, before we end the show, I got to talk about the one stupid thing I did. Now, if you remember last week on the show, I announced that I would start doing some tastings, taste test Tuesdays of products that my nutritionist suggested I should try to kind of better my health. And that product was supposed to be the almond milk. Now, the good news is, yes, I did get the almond milk. And actually, there was a person named Ingrid who suggested I should try the almond milk and help me to purchase it. I appreciate you. Thank you, Ingrid, for that. Very inspiring woman. And her story about her telling me about her goal is to run 50 marathons in all 50 states. And she's just 3 states away from that. So good luck to her and the rest of her endeavors. I know she can do it because you got that far, you're almost there. So anyway, I did indeed buy the almond milk. Here it is right here. Now, I know you may be saying, E, we've been doing the show for a whole hour. Do you have a refrigerator right there? Or do you actually have the almond milk sitting out like that? I understand it's not milk per se, but it still should be refrigerated, right? Right? Well, see, here's the problem. You know how you go grocery shopping and then you get to putting up your groceries and whatnot, and then you try to remember, okay, let's put up all the refrigerated and freezer stuff first. So you get to stuffing things and whatnot, but you get busy and get to being on the phone and all of that. Well, all that was going on when I was putting up the groceries yesterday. Then today came and I got to thinking about the show and whatnot and what I needed. And I was like, what did you do with that almond milk? And could not remember for the life of me where I put it. Had spent all day back and forth through the house trying to figure out where I had put this almond milk. Did I throw it away? Did I not take it out the car? No, I did all that. Where did we find said almond milk? We found it with the stuff that we had bought for the freezer. What does that mean, people? That means, yes, your boy E-Buck the Nighthawk took said almond breeze milk, $4.99, and put it in said freezer. And clearly it says right here on the top of the box, plain as day, E-Beezy, do not freeze. Do not freeze. Now, granted, you know, some people, they did frozen milk for things and whatnot. Some people take ice cubes and put it in the milk and whatnot for their cereal and everything. Obviously, there's a thing called ice cream. But almond milk, not really milk. Remember that. Not really milk. So, of course, this being 2023, I did what anybody would do in 2023 when they do something this stupid and want to know if they can resolve it. Google, can I drink frozen almond milk? And then all these different suggestions pop up. Some of them say technically you can. It's ways to thaw it out and so on and so forth. Others say, well, no, because of almond milk and the consistency thereof, it's best to not drink it frozen or to freeze it, what have you. So half of them say, yeah, half of them say no. I talked to a couple people that deal with almond milk on a regular basis. They were kind of torn. Understand, I've never had almond milk. It was my intention to try it. Don't you think it would probably taint my opinion if I have almond milk for the first time and it's frozen almond milk that ain't in its proper form? Yeah, it might be all right, it may not be. But if I'm looking at a box and several places on the box that says do not freeze, and dummy this guy right here ended up freezing said almond milk, yeah, we probably shouldn't drink that. So Ingrid, I appreciate you for helping me purchase the almond milk, but look like I'm gonna have to go and get rid of it. Unfortunate, very much so. Now keep in mind, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this almond milk back in the refrigerator because it's still very, very frozen, y'all trust. And some of y'all see this show a little bit later on the next day or two. Give me some suggestions as to whether or not I should go with it anyway. If not, what I could do with said almond milk. Should I just throw it away? Should I try to use it for plants or something? If y'all have some type of extra knowledge of almond milk that I don't, that you may use it for other things, skincare, I don't know, soak your feet, something. Let me know something in the comments, and maybe we can save the almond milk's usage. Meanwhile, next week we'll get some nice almond milk that is not frozen, and again attempt to try it on the air. We'll just have to pony up and buy some milk. Stupid me. But anyway, such is life. Sometimes you do things that you come to regret, but in the end, you got to forgive yourself because it ain't like I meant to freeze the almond milk. It is what it is. So anyway, that will end this episode of the I Am Nighthawk Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you for doing so. Please support the people that I asked you to support earlier in the show. And thank you always for supporting me and for being a part of these broadcasts. We appreciate you. Until next week, we are headed out. Remember, tomorrow, tune in for another episode of the Big Buck Sports Report and also the Guru's football session as part of said show, where we'll talk about last week's football games, MLB playoffs, WNBA, all that good stuff. Until then, I am E-Buck the Nighthawk. Be blessed. Don't stress. Don't go to war. Just let the Lord deal with the rest, okay? That part right there. We up out of here.